wanted to kick it off by talking a little bit about the state of database monitoring today. We'll spend a couple minutes on this, talk about Stackdriver and Bindplane, and then go into a demo and finally talk with one of our early customers that are actually using this solution. But the reason to talk about the state of database monitoring is just to get on the same page. Can I ask, how many people here, is it your kind of primary responsibility to be managing databases inside of your environment? And then for how many people is it kind of a secondary or tertiary responsibility for you? Okay. So I would imagine a lot of you have already been through this experience, but in the last 5 to 10 years, there have been a couple of pretty significant changes in the database landscape. If we go back that period of time, a lot of companies were really just focused on maybe one proprietary database, and they would use that in almost every situation inside of their environment, and they would run it on the same thing. So it'd be, a lot of times you would have a proprietary database that you're paying licensing fees for. Maybe it was running on-prem on VMware, right? And that was basically everything that you were dealing with, and it was much simpler than what we're seeing today. Because really what we've seen over the last few years is a pretty quick migration, not only to the cloud, so now you're dealing with that same database. It may be migrated to the cloud or maybe in both locations, but then also in the number of database types that we're dealing with. And that's really where we've seen the biggest explosion. So it started with companies moving to open source databases, the same types of relational databases, but they didn't want to pay those same fees that they were paying in the past. But they still kept those prior, the databases they had previously. So they still had the Oracles and the SQL servers, but they just added in another layer. Then really the next step was to move to NoSQL databases. So a lot of cluster databases. And then finally, we'd move to fully hosted in the cloud databases. So really what that says is, all right, we've got this hugely complex problem that we didn't have to deal with a few years ago. And what we've noticed is the tools really haven't kept up. So you don't have an easy solution out there. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve here with Bindplane and with Blumidora, or with Bindplane and Stackdriver. So if I step back and say, let's start by trying to find a common set of things that we're looking for in all these databases, because we know we have half a dozen to a dozen inside of our environments that we need to monitor. We want to try and find the common threads between those. And really what we're looking for in all situations is, roughly in order, we want to know the health and availability of the databases. We want to understand the performance. We need to be able to see the performance of the database and understand when there's a clear degradation. We want alerts from the databases, things like root cause analysis, so the ability to figure out why this is happening. And then finally, optimization, so the ability to see capacity, to plan capacity. And we want that across the board. So that's kind of number one, what we're looking for here. But it's a really good idea not to stop there. What we really want to do is go one level further and look at the infrastructure underneath it. And this is more challenging because we have a situation now where you have some that are in the cloud, some that are on-prem, some may be in GCP, but you may also be using other public clouds as well. And that can make these types of metrics challenging. But if you really want to get to a spot where you're not pointing fingers throughout the organization, it's important to have all of these. So this is the challenge that we're faced with. If we want to be able to get all those metrics and get that visibility at the database and infrastructure layer, we have a lot of data sources that we need to deal with. From the metrics side, we have API metrics for a lot of your NoSQL databases. For like Cassandra, you're going to have to go through an API. You'll have JDBC for all the traditional relational databases, but it's going to be different for each one. We have logs for queries and alerts for both of those. And then the same thing down at the infrastructure layer. We need to get the cloud metrics, virtualization metrics, host logs for both of those. So getting all of that and pulling it all together is one of the big challenges here. So let's talk about the solutions.
So Mike's just described a sticky situation that a lot of us have found ourselves in recently. What can we use? What tools are available to help us mitigate this, to give us a single pane of glass set of observability tools? The first I'm going to talk about is Stackdriver. How many of you are familiar with or use Stackdriver? OK, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I want to remind you, just in case you only use part of Stackdriver and you're not aware of all of the other features. Stackdriver is Google Cloud's monitoring and observability tool. We also have application performance management tools as well. Stackdriver has 3 basic pillars. There's monitoring, which will be our focus today. There's logging. And there's APM, as I just mentioned. And for all Google Cloud services, this all happens automatically. You spin up your GCP instance of whatever it is, and you get your metrics and your logs in Stackdriver without any additional instrumentation. So what we're really talking about is adding that level of observability for your third-party applications that you're running on Google Cloud, or your third-party applications that you're running on-prem or in other clouds, as well as the underlying services that you're using on-prem and in other clouds. And what solution are we using to get those metrics and those logs into Stackdriver? We're using Blumedora's bindplane. Bindplane is essentially an agent as a service offering that allows you for metrics to deploy a single metric collector to your environment. As long as it can talk to all of your different services that you're monitoring, it can pull those metrics together, send them up to bindplane, and then send them along to Stackdriver. I'm not going to spend too much time talking through this picture because you'll see our demo later, and that's a little more interactive and exciting. But I do want to mention that bindplane supports about 150 different services, ranging from bare metal hardware all the way up to third-party application services. And it's available at no additional cost to Stackdriver users. So if you're sending your metrics into Stackdriver, you'll pay Stackdriver for your custom metrics, but you're not going to pay bindplane as well. There's no added fee. We're talking specifically about databases here, and we did want to list out the databases. This is a list today. There are several others that are in the pipe, but bindplane offers about 12 different integrations. If there's a database that you care about that isn't on this list, come up and talk to us after. Come find Blumedora at their booth or come find me. We would love to get your feedback, and there's a pretty fast turnaround time on all of the instrumentation that's required to add a new service. We're also going to talk about these specific types of infrastructure. So Google Cloud, obviously, but also on-premise, both virtualized and bare metal. And we'll touch on other cloud vendors' observability as well. Again, I'm not going to go too much into depth with this because the demo is a little more interesting. But bindplane gives us a huge amount of control over those metrics that we're pulling from a given service. You may not be interested in anything, and bindplane gives you KPIs that are flagged as things that you probably do want to report on. But this is just a view of the level of configurability where you can select exactly which metrics are important to you and make sure those are available in Stackdriver. And then you can see here on the right what sort of observability looks like in Stackdriver. We've got here a slow query log showing up in Stackdriver monitoring. And so this is the solution that we're talking about today, centralizing database monitoring across clouds, across on-prem, with Stackdriver and bindplane. We are focusing on monitoring. I do want to mention that logging support is also in alpha right now with bindplane. And so if you're interested in joining that program, please come talk to us after. That really allows you to centralize all of your signals for your databases in one place. All right, demo time.
Great. Thanks, Marie. So we're going to go into a demo. Going to talk about a few different things. One, how do you set up bindplane and Stackdriver? We'll do a quick overview of the Stackdriver and the database monitoring solution, and then go through how you would solve a couple of problems using this combination. And then at the end, I'm going to take us a few minutes just to take a look at our new logs alpha that we have available. All right. So what we're looking at here is bindplane. It's a product by Blumedora. It's a SaaS application. And the intent of it is, like we've mentioned, to extend Stackdriver beyond just Google products into databases, but also infrastructure, other clouds, other workloads that you may be interested in. And the way it works is we have, in this case, I'm monitoring 3 different data centers. So the one data center on the right is on-prem data center. We're monitoring VMware. We're monitoring a number of different physical systems like Pure Storage, some Cisco networking gear, as well as servers, and then a range of different database types as well. So we're gathering all of that data. We're sending it up to Bindplane, and then it's going directly to Stackdriver. We also have a data center here that is GCP based. And in this case, you'll notice we're not monitoring GCP. That, as Marie mentioned, is already baked in. So you have availability, you have the observability into all the GCP metrics for the infrastructure. But we do add monitoring for things like databases or any other workloads that you could be running there. And then the last data center is another public cloud that we're monitoring, where we can pull data from those specific services that you're using there, as well as databases or other workloads you could be running. The idea is that you can use this even if you are running on multiple clouds, even if you have a data center or have databases on-prem. We can pull it all together into a single solution and then get visibility to all of that inside of Stackdriver. So let's take a closer look at the collector first. So I mentioned that we have a collector installed in each data center. So this doesn't need to be installed locally on your databases. It will connect remotely to those databases as long as there's network visibility. And we've made this as simple as possible to install. So you just choose the platform that you want to install it on. In this case, I'm just going to choose Mac OS for a demo. We have, in most cases, a single line installer. So we just copy this, paste it in my terminal. And depending on the network connection speed here, it's going to download the collector. And really, this is a very small, small collector because it doesn't have any of the plugins. So the 150 or so different extensions that we support aren't downloaded all at the same time. What the collector does is it's a simple Java-based application that can run any of these plugins that I'm going to show you, can gather data, and is fully managed by the Bindplane service. So it's one of the great things about this is you are unlikely to need to go back into the server to configure a JSON file or modify anything. Here, we can handle that all remotely through Bindplane itself. So if I flip back, I see that the collector that I installed locally has reached back out to Bindplane and it's registered itself. Now, if I wanted to, I can convert this to a group. And this is if you have very large environments or you have availability requirements, what we recommend is building out a cluster of these collectors. It's very simple to do, and it'll automatically handle failover, as well as increasing the throughput if you have a very large environment. But for now, I'm just going to leave that single collector. We'll see that it's now available inside of Bindplane as my new data center, which is just my laptop. And we need to add a source. So you can see these are the sources that we're currently monitoring. To us, a source just means it could be a database, it could be a VMware instance, a vSphere instance, it could be a physical server. And we can see all of the sources that we have available. So we have public cloud vendors, we have physical compute, so things like Dell servers, VMware vCenter instances, the databases, which we're going to talk about more today, things like load balancers, popular load balancers, as well as network switches, physical storage, so your NetApp or your Nimble or EMC is all available. And even some kind of manager of managers or larger applications like SAP, IIS, JBoss. So it's pretty wide ranging and it's rapidly expanding. Like Marie said, we're always looking for feedback from customers to hear what you're looking for next. So we can add that to our roadmap. But today I have a Postgres database that's running on my laptop, so I'm going to choose that. I will choose the new collector that I just created, and we'll configure it.
And as Mike is configuring it, we're going to ask all of you to not hack his local Postgres database using the credentials he's about to type in. It's extremely secure.
Yeah, and no SSL. That's how I secure my database. So we'll test the connection. And what this is going to do, so if I had put in incorrect credentials, I'll even show you. Let's say if this was wrong. If I hit test connection, this is going to attempt to log in, attempt to collect data, and then identify if there are any problems. So we want to have a good tight feedback loop to make this configuration process as easy as possible. And this is one of the areas I think can be challenging. If you're dealing with a large environment and you need to get monitoring set up, if you don't have that feedback, it can take a lot longer than necessary. It's really simple. This is pretty much what you would need in the vast majority of databases that you want to monitor, just a host, a port that will provide the default and credentials. And we'll let you know, if you click through into our help settings, we'll show the minimum user required for every database type. So we're not asking you to give up admin rights to a database to monitor it, right? We will have the minimum required user for each of these. I'm going to click add, and this will now show up inside of my environment.
And Mike, what if I had a bunch of environments that I wanted to install the collector in?
That is a good question. So for customers that have large environments or a lot of these, we're not going to ask you to go in through the API or through the UI every single time. We have an API designed specifically for that to allow you to script out the installation of collectors, even attach it to a chef script, things like that. So now you can see I have a Postgres database. It's collecting data. It's sending all of that data directly to Stackdriver. If I drill in, probably have all the metrics shut off right now, but just to give you an idea of the type of things that we gather, these are all of the available resource types. So you can see we have obviously the databases and the instances, but also things like the index, the query plans, and more. And if I drill into one of these specifically, you can see all of the specific metrics that are available. Now, one of the things we do, because we're intending to serve a wide audience here, and so we don't expect you to necessarily need all of these metrics. And we'll let you know what the KPIs are and what may make the most sense by flagging them here. So if you're setting this up and you're not really sure what you want to look at, we recommend that you just enable the KPIs to get started. And for the folks that, if it's your primary responsibility to manage databases, there's a good chance you know what you want to look at. You have ideas of what those specific metrics are, and you can go through and pick those out as well. So that's an overview of bindplane, but now I want to show you what it looks like when we actually jump into Stackdriver. So this is Stackdriver. This is the project that I'm sending all that data to. The first thing I want to show you is just the access we have now. So just like with your Google metrics, click in here. Oops. I just want to filter and show you that we have. So if I want to do a search on Cassandra metrics, those are all available here. Let's say I want to look for some Cisco hardware. A little bit of a slow search, but
turns out the Wi-Fi in movie theaters is not always the best.
One more shot here. There we go. So now you see all of the Cisco. So this would be like your Cisco hardware, servers, also network gear. It's all available. Everything that you saw there that we're sending over is now shows up inside of your Metric Explorer. And you can use it for everything that you're normally using Stackdriver for. So you can create alerts on it. We have some that are available here. So like here's an example of an alert that we've set up for a database specifically. So it's a buffer cache hit ratio check. So we have this on all of our SQL Server databases to flag when we notice that there's a buffer cache hit significantly below 1 for over a certain amount of time. And that's an important one for us to keep an eye on. And what we've done is, just in case somebody that may not be familiar with this comes in and gets this alert, we want to make sure that it's really clear what they need to do. So we've provided the documentation, links to where you can go to get more details on how to resolve that. And what we're doing today is we've built up a list of these incidents that are available. We can provide them to you as part of the installation process, if that's helpful. Or for folks that have a really good idea of what they want and what they need to see, it's easy to build your own alert structure. So the next thing I wanted to take a look at was the dashboards. And this is just giving you an idea of what you can do with Stackdriver and with all the information that's available. So in this case, what I have is one of those databases that was running on-prem. It's running on a Pure Storage array. It's using VMware. It's running on vCenter as well. And I have an issue that came in from a customer. So the application that's using this database, they've said that they've noticed some deteriorating conditions. And so we want to go in and take a look at how do we find that? How do we find where that's coming from? And this is one of the big things that we're trying to solve here is how do we prevent teams from pointing the finger at the other group, right? So is it a database issue? If you're on-prem, there's a lot of complexity. Is it actually a storage issue or is it a virtualization issue? And that's what we're identifying here. So if you look, what we've done is pulled together some key metrics from all of the components in the stack. So I'm looking at the Pure Storage host latency, which is spiky, but nothing's jumping out at me as a clear issue. I can go in and I see, all right, well, I'm seeing some repetitive vCenter host memory used. So these are spikes in the host memory that SQL Server database is running on. I also see disk weight, and I can identify the specific database this is running on. So it's not disk weight on tempdb or master. This is specifically on my app0 database. So I know there's wait time. Okay, operations are increasing as well. Seeing a large spike in activation count, and here's the problem. So I see specifically, I can narrow it down to the queries, and I can get access to that individual query, the query text, that seems to be causing a major spike at this time every hour. So what I'm going to do is go back, if I'm the application owner, I'm going to take a look at what's running this query, either optimize it, or we'll modify the frequency that's running. But it lets you get through what could normally take a lot of interactions, jumping back and forth between a storage team, virtualization team, a database team, or the cloud team. So that's one example of an on-prem use case. Let's take a look at something similar in if you're running it in GCP. So really what we're trying to show here is side by side, how can we use this data in a way to help explain what's going on and make it really obvious when an issue at the infrastructure or GCP layer may be caused by the database or vice versa. And so what we have on the left here, these are metrics coming from GCP. So this is the performance of the disk that a database is running on. And one thing I'll point out is we see these read spikes, right? And so without any database visibility, I really don't know what's causing that read spike. But since we do have those metrics for the SQL Server, I can take a look at that read spike that I'm getting from GCP. I can correlate it back to the database that's running on that. And again, I can see, all right, it's my app GCP database specifically that seems to be causing that problem. And I can go through active connections. They seem to be spiking a bit. And again, if there's a query specifically related to that, it's easy. We make it really easy to find. So those are a couple of dashboards for if you have a single kind of mission critical database or something that you want to really focus in on. But what about if you have just a very large number of databases? So if you have several dozen that you're trying to manage, maybe they're all the same type, maybe there's a variety, and really what you're looking for are outliers. So if you want to find something that maybe is experiencing issues inside of say in this case, a SQL Server farm. And this is really easy to do as well. So what we have in this dashboard is we're monitoring 36 databases, and we have some of the key performance indicators for all of those. So we can identify when one of them is outside of the norm, whether it's things like disk wait time. You can see the cache hit ratio, the CPU usage, queries, instant lock wait time. And so a couple of things I'll see right away. Number one is that we see some of these spikes that we may want to investigate, but also CPU usage. Well, this is an unusual one that's very low on CPU. So maybe I'll take a look at this and try and understand what's going on with this. It's outside of the norm. So there's prod 5. And we can use the normal filtering functionality inside of Stackdriver.
And if the Wi-Fi comes through for us.
Yeah. But let me give it one more shot here.
There we go.
There we go. So now I've narrowed it down to that specific database. And we can take a look at what's going on and maybe get a better sense of why this one is so low, whether it's still needed, or if maybe it's something that we can push off to another database. So those are a couple of the specific ways that you can use this in Stackdriver, monitor your databases. Now before I go back, I wanted to give a quick overview of our new logs feature as well. So if we flip over to logs, number one, I'll mention this is in alpha, so if it's something that you're interested in, please talk with one of us. We'd love to give you access, but it won't be available out of the box. And this is very similar to what we're doing with metrics, but since it's logs focused, it's going to run a little differently. It does require an agent on every database or every workload or server that you're trying to monitor. But what we've done is we've really tried to simplify the way that this gets deployed, the way it handles collecting the logs, and then how it can be used inside of Stackdriver. So you can see I have an agent. I have it pre-configured with a destination, so it's going to send logs to Stackdriver, to a specific project I've set up. I have it configured for Oracle here. But if I look at the sources, there are a lot of other sources that are available. And this is pretty early. There are a number here, but we're adding to them very rapidly. So you see a lot of focus on databases to start, and then that'll expand out. But if there's something that you don't see here yet, we also have generic plugins that you can use to gather data and gather logs.
One really nice feature of both the monitoring collector and this logging agent is lifecycle management. If you ever tried to manage a number of different components and keep them up to date, you know how challenging that is. And this just does that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that we've tried to focus on as much as possible, because we really believe that there's been folks have neglected that side of monitoring. It tends to be really hard to get things installed, or harder than I think it needs to be, to get things installed and then keep them up to date. And since things change so rapidly, so for example, we're building these very, very quickly. We frequently will release several per month, or at least updates per month. It's not trivial to take that and move it out to all of your environments. So I have one of these databases set up right now. It's just an Oracle database. Let's take a look at the logs. So if I go into the logs viewer, first of all.
You probably want to zoom in a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
Not very readable.
Too much. There we go. So you'll see, first of all, I just want to note that we have everything from the Oracle Audit Log and a number of others. So Oracle Alert Log. And I wanted to show you that one of the really powerful things you can do. So you'll notice here that I have a sysdba user that has accessed or is attempting to access something within my database. And within our environments, that's considered a major security flaw, major security concern. If we see a lot of these, then we may need to take a look. So what I would do is I'd take that I can create a metric off of that specific line, log line, and get an alert set up whenever there's an issue, whenever I identify that that sysdba user is in use. And a couple of ways that'll come up is you'll see we have a dashboard here specifically for Oracle where we're combining those logging metrics that we've created and the traditional metrics that you're getting from our original source into one dashboard. And this is useful because we can see, right, this gives me some insight into things like the security. I can see how many of these sysdba, how much sysdba activity there is. I can also see if there are any failing tasks. This is something that you can't get with just metrics, but you can when you extend it out to logs. And then right alongside that, I have what you would expect to see, traditional metrics monitoring, Oracle session count, session utilization, even CPU, and query information. And again, we have alerts, so if you have that alert, we can set it up, we can provide good guidance to the user on what the actual issue is, how to resolve that issue, even reference documentation. And whenever you get that, you can automatically jump into logs and take a look at the context around that specific failure. So let's take a look and see, all right, well, now I know exactly where that occurred, and I can see the context, what occurred before and after. So before I wrap up, just wanted to show you where you find this. So we're currently in the marketplace. If you just search for BindPlane or Blue Medora, it'll come up with our marketplace listing. And I'm already activated, but it gives you a quick overview. And then you just click a button, it'll take you over to BindPlane. You'll create an account for your company, and then you're ready to go. We're happy to jump on a call if it's something that you want assistance with getting started. But like I said, this is, or like Marie said, this is at no cost in addition to what you're already paying for Stackdriver and GCP. So with that, I will hand it back over to you, Marie.
All right, so we've just done a slick demo showing you all the cool things you can do with our new solution that we're offering to you. But now we want to talk to an actual user, real human, not fake, who's using this today and get his insights on what it's allowed him to do and really what it's enabled. And I have to turn off this mic. So please welcome to the stage Tim Wright of Eastbound Tech. Thank you for joining us, Tim. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So that's my name. That's what I do. I'm a longtime user of Google Cloud, specifically Windows. Been using it since they released it, but have only used Stackdriver kind of reluctantly because it was my environments were so mixed with being on-prem and in the cloud, and so that's a little bit about where I'm at.
All right, and tell us about the databases that you're working with. What sort of things are you trying to do with them? What challenges have you faced?
So the biggest challenge has been, again, the on-prem versus cloud, where I've been running a lot of Microsoft SQL on-prem, some of it in the cloud on Windows servers, and then running Google Cloud SQL, and then over on some other platforms running some other databases. And so it's been a very mixed, definitely a mixed environment with a lot of different databases, and it's been extremely difficult having, like you said, a single pane of glass to look at all this stuff.
And so you've been using the Blue Medora Stackdriver solution. What has that allowed you to do?
So it let me not renew my 5-figure solution for SIEM last year. It let me dump multiple open source solutions and actually concentrate in one place, which would be Stackdriver. I use Chef to manage my BindPlane installations. It's extremely easy. I would say we were talking about this with these guys the other day, I spend almost no time in your guys' website. Not because I don't like it, but because it works, it's simple, I'm in there, I configure my sources, collectors, and I'm out. And then I'm the rest of the time in Stackdriver. So this has really given me a solution where I can put a little bit of effort and have a huge return compared to what it cost me to maintain my installations on the open source solutions and the paid solutions. It's really simplified my monitoring of databases. Not only that, but of infrastructure as a whole. So I'm dumping all of my VMware stats in there, all of that info, everything from Windows. It's been huge for me to have a single pane of glass, and it's not been something that like some of the other solutions. You had a lot of promise up front of it'll be great, it'll be like this, and this has truly been. Working with the guys from BindPlane has been fantastic. I've asked, hey, we should do this, or this would help me, and they're like, all right, sweet. And then it's out like the next week. Not that they'll do that every time, but they've been extremely fast, extremely responsive. So.
That's great, and thank you for the strong endorsement. So it sounds like you're saving a lot of time with the solution, a lot of energy. What's next for you with all of that free time you've got?
Seriously, mountain biking. It's allowing me to give more meaningful data. And so specifically on the SQL side, our monitoring and alerting has been all over the place from multiple companies. And what this is doing is it's letting me actually consolidate and simplify. So it really is time saving. It takes time to build out dashboards, build out alerts, but so far it's been massively useful.